Hey everyone, welcome back to Grey Wizard Gaming. In this video, I'm going to be going over the Shaggai map, how it works, how the gameplay feels, the components, and then what factions maybe benefit or at least are changed from what's going on in this very interesting map. So the background for this map. Now, for those who aren't fully aware, generally the maps for Cthulhu Wars introduce an alternate dimension or planet where some story made a reference to it. And in general, most of the stories in the H.P. Lovecraft kind of books, they just make side references, right? So we just have to imagine what he was referring to, especially when there's multiple books either all referring to the same thing in the same way, or in sometimes conflicting, which reflects this idea that everyone has a different perspective on these things, and we can't really even know, right? Just like our real world history. If you weren't there, you can't know, and even if you weren't there, you can't know everybody's perspective. So this is Shaggai. Shaggai is the home planet of the Shan, which is the insects from Shaggai. Those are those mind controlling things. They generate a pyramid in England, and they start possessing people by shifting their dimensionality until they overlap somebody, and then they start controlling their brain or controlling the body like a puppet kind of thing. So insects from Shaggai, they come from this planet. They're the Shan, and their planet a long time ago was destroyed. They summoned him, they couldn't control him, and he's eating the world. So they know the world is doomed. So that's going on. But that's not what destroys the planet. What destroys the planet is apparently, and I don't know how much of this is canon, as much as there is canon, but Groth, he sends these cosmic waves towards the planet, and that ends up destroying the planet, is these cosmic waves. From Groth. It's not 100% clear to me because it's been a long time since I read the relevant stories, but the Mi-Go may have done something to cause this to happen. The Shan are worshippers of Azathoth, and I guess they use this understanding of technology or the dimensions to teleport off their planet. So it's kind of interesting because this is basically the retelling of the end of Shaggai. So you guys start on the world, and in the very beginning, there's a worm of Groth, and as you play, the worms expand, and then ultimately the planet starts getting destroyed, and then either the game ends because somebody hit a normal win condition, or the game is ended because there's just not enough planet left for you to continue playing. The Shaggai is destroyed at that point. So this is literally the end of Shaggai. All right, so what comes in the box? First of all, you get all these Groth. You get all these destruction tokens. You get these dice. You get these giant maps. These maps are the same size as the 6, 7, 8 player map for Core Earth. I don't want things to get smaller, but I will say, Sandy, if you're watching this, I need some fourth dimensional non-Euclidean physics or something, because if things get too much bigger, I don't even know. I mean, it's just really tough to fit all this stuff in here for these videos. Okay. You also get these hint cards, and the hint cards basically give each player really everything they need to know to remind them how to play. And that is super helpful. They're high quality, and I really think that of all the maps, this is probably the best to introduce to new players. It's really cool, and I think the way the rules were made, it can relieve some stress for new players who are struggling to figure out how to fulfill certain faction spellbooks. Because a lot of people love a faction more than they love how to play the faction. And yeah, this can just relieve some pressure while they get used to a particular faction they've fallen in love with. So I really like that. All right, so how do you play? Well, the first player, in this case Cthulhu, because I have Cthulhu on the board, would put a worm on here. And at this point, the game basically plays pretty normal. It's not a donut or anything weird. It's just a normal sphere planet, which means that they wrap. And because the map is organized in these hexagons, then they kind of give you these helpful arrows so that you know how the Spire of Groth is actually adjacent to the ocean belt yellow, and so on, right? So you've got all these super helpful arrows, and it can be I think it can be a little bit confusing. That is definitely the only maybe frustration, is that this ocean belt yellow is not matched to the Spires of Groth, because the Spires of Groth is actually here. So it's just the nature of the hexagons and everything. I highly recommend to not allow anyone to keep their figures on a partial hexagon. In Earth, it's totally okay. We'll have figures on either side of the same ocean, but here, use the arrows as a guide, but then put your figures in, either whole place. Otherwise, it can get really confusing. So, okay. So first player puts their worm out. You just play just like normal. You do your things. You put out, some factions, some gates, whatever. And then the next Doom phase, you do all of the normal Doom phase stuff, but then you have some extra things. So 1, you degrade worms. So at the end of the Doom phase, roll worm dice equal to the number of players. So I'd roll 3. And any worm whose number matches a die result is replaced with an eradication token. These are the eradication tokens. So this worm I have out is 4, which means that this worm was destroyed, and now this hex is eradicated. So there was nobody here, so that's fine. And now we place new worms. So each player places 1 new worm. So let's say Cthulhu. Now they have to be adjacent to a worm or an eradication place. So let's say that he says, you know what? I'm gonna put this worm right on top of Black Goat. And then let's say that Black Goat is gonna put a worm that has to be adjacent. So let's say that he puts it in Ocean Belt, let's say Ocean Belt Violet. And then Black Goat is like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put it right here. I'm gonna put a worm all the way. Again, each of these were adjacent. And then you just, you start playing. Now that worms are in the same place as players, the next round is different. So now you have access to the cosmic power. Also, you have an eradicated area. So you have to now worry, how do you move from this side of the world to this side of the world? Well, you have 2 choices. So first of all, let's finish the cosmic power. So any player with a gate in an area containing a worm, which is Black Goat, they can pay 6 power to place any spell book. So that is pretty nice. By all means, you shouldn't do this until you need to do this, but I believe it is cheaper generally to pay 6 power to satisfy the spellbook for have units in 8 areas. Boom, 6 power, done. Otherwise, a lot of Black Goat players really struggle. And in the beginning, competent Black Goat players just stomp people. But when you're new to the game, getting units in 8 areas will encourage them to spread out across the entire board, and then they get eaten up and they lose and they get frustrated, right? Here you go, pay 6 power, you got a worm, cosmic power, done. You have the spellbook. So I think that is very, very interesting. I think there's a lot of factions that can benefit from that. I'll talk about that later in the video. You also can pay an additional 2 power when awakening or summoning a unit that has area restrictions. So, Cthulhu, if his area is destroyed and all of this is gone, then now he doesn't have his home area, and in order to awaken Cthulhu, you have to have your home area. Well, you can just pay an extra 2 power as long as you have a gate and a worm in the same space. So that's really interesting. There's some interesting things like Opener of the Way. Opener of the Way is a gate. Windwalker must destroy a gate. So you can pay 2 power and summon Rentegoth on top of Yog-Sothoth, destroying Yog-Sothoth because the gate is destroyed. You can only do that if Yog-Sothoth is not somewhere that there's already a gate. If there's somewhere that's already a gate, then the gate that is already there, the other normal gate would be destroyed, not Yog-Sothoth. But I think it's still very interesting. Definitely look for some cool combos, some weird things here. All right, so that's the cosmic power. Gate plus worm is the cosmic power for you, and it's either 6 power to get a spell book, 2 power to bypass a area restriction. All right, move. When moving through an area that's eradicated, you can move skipping it. So I have 3 units here. I spend 3 power and I move all the way from here to here, to Guyot. But I lose a unit. So in this case, Black Goat, I would lose the ghoul, because with the right spell books, the ghoul is free. So on one hand, as the eradicated zones expand and expand, you can get further and further by going through the eradicated zones at the cost of a unit. So you have to make that decision whether it makes sense or not. Any movement must pay the cost of using a unit. If you choose to go through eradicated areas when you're pained, that costs a unit. If you submerge using Cthulhu, you do not, because you did not move through something. If you fly using Crawling Chaos, then it does cost you something. So that's really the 2 unique aspects of the map that will substantially change things. All right, so we have our next turn. We did stuff, and again, we're gonna roll these dice. And I got 1, 2, and 3. We look at the numbers on the worms. This is 1. So with 1, that means this worm is gone, and we put an eradication token there. We'll finish that in a moment. What is this? This is 2. So eradication token. And now the gate is destroyed. So the Call of Cthulhu player gets a Elder Sign, and then 5 cultists are destroyed. So that earns 5 power. You get 1 power per unit and 1 elder sign per gate. And you also get a elder sign per faction Great Old One, which means if Cthulhu had been there, you would get 1 power because he's a unit, and you would get 1 elder sign because he's a Great Old One. And that is how that works. Now, the only last game rule related to this specific world is if there is less than 2 units per player, in this case 6 areas. If there's less than 2 areas per player, then the game ends. And if any player has at least 6, has all 6 spell books, then they can win, and whoever has the most doom points wins the game. If nobody has 6 spell books, then the game is over. So that's how that works. That's the rules of Shaggai. So what are my thoughts on the factions and this particular map? First of all, I think that this map does not particularly give an advantage to any one faction. I do think that it can reduce the skill level required for certain factions. So some factions that are very difficult for new players to play, they may be able to leverage the cosmic power to just kind of fill in something they struggle with. They're like, man, I never got my 6 spell books in normal Earth play. But here, it's your choice. You are basically guaranteed all 6 spell books if that's what you want to do. You're going to have cosmic power from the worms, and so you can do it. So I really do like this map for actually new players, which is weird because most of the neutral units and things, I don't want to introduce those to new players because I think that the factions are hard enough without them using new players until they've got probably 3 to 5 games under their belt. But Shaggai, I'd actually be okay giving Shaggai to anybody who's played a normal Earth game. I wouldn't want them to play Shaggai first, personally, because I want them to know what the core rules are so they can appreciate or dislike the rules of Shaggai. Also, Shaggai is weird, and unless you're like a really like hardcore Lovecraftian person, you won't necessarily even appreciate it that much. It'll just seem like some weird alien planet. And I think destroying Earth in this like giant Risk-like world, I just think it's satisfying for a new player. But once you've played one game, by all means, introduce Shaggai. It is great. Now, Black Goat, I mentioned it earlier, replacing have units in 8 areas, I think it is generally cheaper to spend 6 power than it is to try to be in 8 areas. You can just kind of like do the math. Obviously, it would cost you 8 power to move 8 units, but you're not really going to do that. You're going to have 3 to 4 gates, and those 3 to 4 gates are going to have, 3 to 4 units, or 3 to 4 areas. So right there, you're already halfway there. So really, it's spend 4 power if you have 4 gates, and so it's pay 6 or pay 4. But you have to think about this from a different perspective, that you pay 4 to move 4 units out of your 4 areas, and then people kill them, and now you've got to summon them again. And that's why I think it's actually cheaper to spend 6 power than it is to have units in 8 areas. But there's other factors that you're supposed to do that with your ghouls. So, your mileage may vary. All right. Crawling Chaos. So I feel like Crawling Chaos is interesting on this map because you can fly around eradicated areas and other players are going to be more tempted to use them, which is good because Crawling Chaos struggles with power sometimes. Now, unlike Black Goat, I don't think Crawling Chaos really should want to spend 6 power to get a spell book, because controlling 4 gates is not that hard. And I'd rather control 4 gates than spend 6 power. Everything else, I don't know. I mean, you can pay 6 power or you can pay 6 power as an action. It doesn't make any sense. So, yeah. All right. Yelling sign, absolutely. You may need the... you may need the 6 power because your glyphs might be destroyed. They might be eradicated. Other than that, it's kind of interesting. Like, I don't know why you'd spend 6 power instead of giving somebody else 3 doom. I guess if you were losing and you were tied for losing, you didn't want to give somebody else power, so now they're ahead of you. Or I mean, not power, 3 doom. But really, just pay the requirements if you can. And if your glyph's destroyed, then obviously you have to pay the 6 power. That's really what it's for. So the ancients, they have a lot of requirements, right? Any faction that has these requirements for these glyphs, they can benefit from this alternate option of paying 2 additional power to bypass that requirement for the unit, or the just flat 6 power cost to get a spell book. So I think ancients can have some benefits there. Chocho. So the Chocho are interesting. I think it can be interesting to have, and I haven't seen this yet, but I think if they allow Ubosathla to be destroyed by a worm, then they can bring him back out for free, and they can get an Elder Sign, and then plan on him being eradicated again. I think that can be interesting. I think that spending 6 power instead of removing your controlled gate, maybe. I don't think so. It's still, I mean, obviously it's still cheaper to resummon a new gate, but it could be close. Windwalker. Windwalker can really benefit from Windwalker. I think it's very interesting to summon Ithaca in an area with a gate. So you need not control the gate. You just summon him anywhere you want for 2 extra power. I think it's very, very interesting. By all means, Windwalker likes Shaggai. Sleeper faction, you spend 3 power, another player gains 3 power. I don't know. I just don't mind benefiting another player who's losing, because hopefully that makes them stronger to help fight the winner. If I'm in the middle and I help the loser, and the loser is now equivalent to me, and that player chooses to attack me, I don't know what the point is. Like, you should be attacking the winner, right? You should be attacking the person closest to having the most doom points or the most spell books, whatever. So I always help people. I'm happy to help people because we're all on the same team, that we don't want the lead person to win until I'm the lead player. And then now I understand that we're no longer, working on the same sheet. All right. And Great Cthulhu. 6 power. That's so easy for Cthulhu to get 6 spell books, isn't it, guys? I've never really heard of anybody struggling to get 6 spell books as Cthulhu, so it's not a big deal. His big thing is you may have to pay the 2 extra power to summon Cthulhu if for some reason you've lost control of your gate area or it's eradicated. And I think that that's the core of it. What I think is very interesting about Shaggai is, yes, this rule exists in case his starting area gets eradicated, but you don't have to wait for it to be eradicated. It could be that Black Goat is intentionally holding this area to keep Cthulhu from coming out. Okay, that's fine. if you have a worm in a gate with the Cthulhu, just use cosmic power. And that's what kind of makes me wish that these rules were just there all the time. I would just honestly, at this point, I would play with the Shaggai most of the time. I like it. I think it's good, and I think it accelerates the gameplay. So, with that, I'm gonna wrap this up. I mean, it is what it is. It's the map, and you saw how it works. You see some ideas on how the certain factions, interact with it. Pay attention to things like you can't force people to move through eradicated zones unless there's no other option. The special rules related to like summoning a Ithaquah on top of Opener of the Way, Yog-Sothoth. That's important. It doesn't destroy Yog-Sothoth unless he's the only gate in that area. Things like that. It's a very interesting game. It's a very interesting change from the core. And like I said, I think once you start playing with it, you should play with it pretty regularly. This is my default go-to map. And I kind of even I want people to play some factions that we don't have people play Chocho anymore. Maybe after the new tribes come out. But I wanna see even how they play. I wanna see when you have a turtling faction and the world's being eaten up, how does that affect them? I wanna know. All right, if you have any war stories and you want to tell how your Chocho handled the eating of the world, by all means, please comment down below. And with that, bye guys.
I can't see your face. Tell me, where did you go? Was it something I did, something I said that made it all fall down? Baby, I need to know, 'cause I'm losing my faith. And the more I give, the less I get.